Good evening. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. We're waiting for one more board member to make her presence, so you can bear with us for just a couple minutes. Public comment section of the meeting before we get started here. If there's anybody out there that hasn't filled out a public comment form and would care to do so, please take the time and do that as soon as possible so you can get your names, submitted up here for some comment. The forms are in the back, on the table back there. Good evening, then. I'm going to start with the public comments that I've received so far. So, first person that I have here is Dave Stockton, and he'd like to talk about safe route sidewalk program in the fall fair of Monee.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We had a village board meeting last Wednesday. We got some up-to-date dates on the sidewalk program with the Village of Monee and the school district, and now it looks like since the state, thought we would have it done before this school year started, but the state is once again holding money back again, so the project completion date is September of 2012. So it looks like it's going to be another year. So we got that information from our engineer, who's in constant communications with the state. Second thing is with Fall Fair. Last year we had a auto show on the Monee Elementary property, and we would like to do that again this year. If you could let me know what kind of paperwork we have the insurance policy and everything, same as last year. If we could, Mr. Rogers, if you could email me, let me know what else, what other documentation you need. The dates of the festivities is the 9th, 10th, and 11th of September.
What I would suggest as an alternative to me calling you, because it would just work faster, if you would call the maintenance department. If you don't know the number, call Terry tomorrow. And all you have to do, we'll put in a pre-call in the morning to say we've done it last year. We just simply need for you to fill out an application, and they will tell you all the things that you'll need.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
All right.
One other thing, too, is I've decided to run for county board for District 1. There's 2 positions up with redistricting, and I just wanted to inform you guys that I will be, in touch with you guys to talk to you about that at another time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Dave,
you.
is there any follow-up that you need on this sidewalk project at all, from us at all?
I don't think so. I think that the village engineer has been in contact with Dan.
Okay.
So if I ever hear of any other updates of them releasing the money sooner, I'll either shoot you guys an email or let Dan know.
Dave, when did you say again that you foresaw the money being released and the project started when again? I forgot.
The job should be completed by September of 2012, so
All right.
a year from now.
Yeah, next year. Okay.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
Yep. The 9th, 10th, and 11th of September. Okay?
The next public comment form that I have is from Mr. Fred Rossi regarding 2016 5-year projection and hiring at Balmoral School.
Thank you. And we have a third one to add there. If I came up here with a hat on, what would you tell me? We're disrespecting the school and disrespecting you. I don't know why we have a hat on. Because you choose to. Okay. So I'll take that outside the district too, because I would expected the board would have asked you to take it off, especially before the flag.
Well, first of all, let me say this, and I don't want to prolong this, but right.
That's
Right. For adults, we do have rules during the school day for our students, but after hours and in public meetings, we don't have student rules that apply to adults. So
okay. So the next time I come in wearing a hat,
if you wear a hat,
will
that's fine.
tell me, oh, that's inappropriate. All right. I
Not,
just
not
wanted,
at a board meeting, no, sir.
I just want it down there to
Okay.
so anybody can wear
As
it.
long as there's certain presentation that's not on the hat that would be vulgar or, discriminatory or something like that.
I
So-
normally don't say anything on. Okay. 2016 projected. Take it to the finance guy. I was at your finance meeting, and what did they say about student population? Increasing, decreasing?
Our forecast shows that over the next, between now and 2016, there will be a slight decrease in student population.
Okay. And what does it say about 2016? Because what I found on your website stops at 2015.
I'm sorry, would you want to know our forecast enrollment amount for 2016?
Not the personnel, but from the meeting, I could have swore it came out that you're only going to have a certain amount of money on hand projected, and that the state required more than that, or would like to have you have more than that before you started your school year.
I remember we discussed that the Illinois State Board of Education recommends that a school district optimally would have 25% of their annual expenditures in their fund balance. Now that's a pretty lofty goal, and only the luckiest and wealthiest districts have that. As of right now, Crete Monee has near that amount in our fund balances, and as long as we continue to monitor our budgets and the state doesn't further reduce revenues that we receive, we could stay near that.
Okay. So why doesn't that tell us on the form that we download and look at? It just says you're going to be watching your budget.
Which
and
form are you referring to?
It just says Crete Monee School District 2OU Finance Personnel Committee meeting minutes, June 8, 2011.
Oh, okay. That's the summary of the meeting that gets
That-
posted on
that-
Board Book?
That's basically a summary which really didn't tell us anything about population going down, about problems we may have in 2016.
Well, everything that's discussed at the meeting isn't itemized out in the summary because it's just meant to be a brief summary. And obviously, if a resident reads the summary and then has further questions, they come in and we could go over the entire meeting again.
Well,
if
I
we
just
want to.
figured, I mean, if I read this and I wasn't at the meeting, I'd go, oh, it says current financial health is stable, despite
is true.
significant reduction in state funding.
Right.
But from the actual finance committee, it looked like we were headed in the wrong direction. And
Well,
then-
and actually, what we discussed at that meeting was there's always two scenarios that we present. There's one scenario that says if we didn't make any changes and didn't plan and just continued on without making any revisions, this is what the future would look like. However, if we take these different steps that we strategically plan out between now and the next 2-3 years, then this is what the other scenario would look like. So basically, that's probably, part of the difference that you're referring to.
Okay, well, we'd just like to see more of. If we're headed for problems, then tell us that, and maybe you'll have more people in here going, what are we doing? Because this was from July, and it shows 4 new positions that you hired for. And it's like, well, if you're supposed to be cutting back, why are we hiring new positions? I know that's not yours. That would have to go to Human Resources and the board. But I know you stated in here you're going to have to make adjustments, strategic budget adjustments, and reduction in staff and non-staff expenditures. And on the same thing, we read 4 new positions were hired. So
Let me tie in a little bit right there and stuff. I think the public comment portion of this meeting is for comment from you to come and speak to us if you have a concern. If you need to get into a detailed discussion about the finances or hiring practices or something like that, I think the appropriate administrator on either side over here and stuff can be made arrangements in order to have a detailed meeting with them in order to consider that. I think it's appropriate for you to make comments like that and stuff, but I really don't want to get into that. We have some time constraints here to try to get into a business portion of our meeting too. So I thank you very much for that. And if you have other comments about the hiring at Balmoral, take those.
Well, the
into
hiring for
consideration.
Balmoral was it a new position, or was it? That has nothing to do with this. This has nothing to do with Balmoral. Mr. Elrod said he believed it was they were filling a position. Okay, that's fine. These are 4 new positions that have nothing to do with Balmoral. It has to do with 2016 budget, this year's budget, where you're hiring new positions. And I keep seeing them. I keep seeing new position, new position. I understand you got to fill a position when somebody leaves, but if I have a business and I say, hey, I don't have the money, then I don't hire new people. I don't create new positions to hire them. So it does have to do with the board because you vote on whether to hire these people.
Thank you for your comments.
And Mr. Rossi, what I would strongly suggest, because honestly, and I'm saying this in all due respect, because I don't have the documents in front of me that you have, it's very difficult for me to understand what you're even saying tonight. So I would hope that maybe you would make another appointment and come visit Mr.
I think you can discuss it with him, and
Yes.
he knows the
Why?
5-year projected better
Yes.
than I do, because all I got is this one sheet that comes down.
Well, and here's the other thing. Tonight we are going to present the tentative budget to the Board of Education and to the public. It will be on display for 30 days. The board, as well as the public, it will be their chance within that 30 days to make appointments with individuals with the district if they have questions that they want to have answered, or by law, there has to be a hearing at the next board meeting before the budget can be approved, and that's another opportunity that the public has to ask questions. In your case, though, I would seriously ask kindly to bring whatever documents that you have so that we can try to understand and follow the position that you're holding tonight, because like I said, honestly, without that, I truly don't even know what you're talking about right now, and I'm not trying to be funny or anything.
Well, no,
I'm just saying I don't know. I truly don't know.
I'll be here at the next meeting.
Okay.
And whatever documents I can find. Remember, I'm looking at documents just like we had the discussion at the finance meeting. And I went, only thing I can get is 2010. The 2011 report is not out yet. So that's what I got to work with. The
Okay.
same thing here. If I brought it up on the web, all I'm going to get is a 1-paragraph type statement of a 5-year projected.
Well, I think what's on the web now, and we'll check, and then I want to close this part of the comment out, is just the fact that, like I said, I think right now on the web is the tentative budget as far as the main points. There's a few charts and things, and then, as I said, there will be a full-blown budget that will be on display for the next 30 days, and it does have a ton of detail to it. Okay?
All right, thank you.
All right.
The 5-year forecast in June that we discussed at the June Finance Committee meeting was then also presented at the June board meeting, and then the full presentation is posted on Board Book at the June, I believe June 20th board meeting. It's on there. If you go to the agenda packet, it's one of the links where it's the full presentation is on there.
I'll look at it.
Okay.
I'll let you continue on with the next.
Thanks.
State for myself, I certainly did not mean to in any way disrespect you, but I do want to say to you that my clothing and my apparel is who I am. My outfit is a part of who I am. It does not negate my ability to do what I'm charged to do here tonight. So I just want you to know that I understand your inquiry and I appreciate you asking the question.
Thank you. The next public comment that I have is from Janetta Miller, and it's in regards to recent high school hiring procedures and the Oversight Committee.
Good evening. I'll start with I've expressed interest in the Oversight Committee, and I haven't received a letter since June. Now, I start with that because it is public knowledge that a high school employee was released due to allegations of unethical behavior. Now, there has been other information that has come forward that on that hiring committee for his replacement, the young man and his father who was involved in this incident sat on that committee. Now, while it's definitely not illegal, I think it is very unethical. Let me also emphasize that I'm not pointing a finger at anyone up here. I do understand the procedures and the policies and what goes into hiring, and I know the board comes in afterwards. However, the responsibility falls at every board member's feet. You all decide who comes into our schools. My son is there, my daughter is in the school district. For every family member of every child that's in that building, I think it is your responsibility as board members to make sure that the policy, the procedures are done in an ethical manner with integrity. So I started off with the Oversight Committee because that was the main reason why I wanted to get involved, to make sure that I was a part of that process, to make sure that we are making good, solid decisions for this district and for our children. And again, I haven't heard anything since June. I don't know about anybody else. And I don't know if you all were aware that this happened, but I wanted to make sure that board members were aware to make sure that something like this doesn't happen. I don't like reading the paper about my district saying things that are, this person was arrested, or just the negativity. I like to see that the teams are doing good, that the students are doing good. So I hope that we're going to do better with that.
I'd like to say, Janetta, first of all, I do know I was the one who sent out the initial letter for the Oversight Committee, and
Yes, I
Mr.
received that one.
Riggler was the one who's supposed to send the follow-up letter. I do know that there's been some other inquiries. What I will tell him, and he has answered those inquiries, but I think because it seems like school is about to start and there's people wondering, well, was there a meeting? Is there a meeting? I will instruct him tomorrow to put out some sort of correspondence to everyone who was sent that original letter, because he has said that he has been delayed due to the fact that he was out most of the summer and so on, and he's putting the letter together now.
Okay.
It should be going out hopefully within the next few days, but I'll tell him at least to put the email out immediately so that people who have not heard anything or have not inquired will at least know that the letter is forthcoming.
Okay.
As far as the other issue, all I can say is that there is some discussion tonight with the board in closed session, and so there may be some things that might be related to that that we will be discussing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public comment that I have is from Reverend Dr. James Hunt in regards to the high school basketball coach selection.
Good evening. Again, I'm Reverend Dr. James E. Hunt. I'm the pastor of New Hope Christian Community Church, 4700 West Court Street in Monee, Illinois. I'm also a past trustee of the Crete Library Board. And I'm a parent of 2 graduates of Crete Monee High School, as well as the husband of a graduate. And so I have a distinct interest, along with all the young people who are members of my congregation who attend Crete Monee High School. And my question is simply this, I was here last month at the meeting, and I sat with a gentleman, believe we were the only ones here, and I introduced myself. I learned that that gentleman was a past graduate of Crete Monee High School, very distinguished basketball player during his time. And he shared with me his resume. I thought he would be a great candidate, and he was at the meeting to inquire as to the status of the process. And that's really why I'm here right now. Given some of the things that have happened in the past, unfortunate incidents that have happened in the past, I'm really interested in what the process is for the selection of the high school basketball coach for Crete Monee, given that it impacts not only our young people, but it impacts the community as well. And so I'm looking to get some insight as to the process and the current status.
I'll speak to that also, and I'll have Dr. Edison speak too if he cares to. I can say this much publicly, that at the last board meeting, here's and I'll let any board member speak to this too if they want to. The board is taking their time in the administration to make sure that this process is correct. As you well know, unfortunately, we have had good news about the basketball program, and we have had some news that hasn't been as good as it relates to the personnel that was running the program. Unfortunately, was under an allegation and now is no longer employed with the district. I think the board has made it very clear to us that they wanted to make sure that we did everything to exercise due diligence to make sure that, first of all, that a wide enough pool of people would be interviewed that would include past alumni, that background checks would be done thoroughly, references would be checked, and so on, and that we would look at a variety of factors before this decision is made. Usually the Board of Education does not get involved in coaching decisions, but this is one that the board wanted to still be informed as to what is going on prior to a decision being announced. So there was some discussion at the last board meeting in closed session because it was a personnel matter. There will be an update given to the board tonight, and I will say to you, hopefully, there will be some announcement relatively in the near future about a decision that will be made. The process is pretty much the traditional process in the sense of a posting. Applications are submitted and reviewed not only by the school but by our HR department very carefully. Screenings take place before we decide to call anyone in to be interviewed, and then a selection of people are selected to come in and interview. We try as hard as possible to make sure that there's diversity in that pool, in terms of every type of diversity that you can think of, including experience, gender, ethnicity, any kind of persuasion that you can think of, so that for sure that we can cover all of those bases. So right now we're still in process, but we're quickly, hopefully, coming to a conclusion.
May I ask one more question?
Sure.
In terms of the process, I understand that the board deems that this is important enough that they are part of this decision. May I ask, what are the things that you've learned from the last process? What are the things that you're really concentrating on that you will make a more informed decision this time around?
Well, I think...
In other words, I'm asking, what was broken last time?
I'm not going to necessarily say that something was broken as much as I just think that as much as you would think that the people that you hire, that, you know, what's on paper, and when you check background, certainly the last coach was background checked, FBI checked, et cetera, we did have to rethink the idea of how deep, how far, how broad do we need to go to make sure, to ensure that just sometimes what shows up on paper by mechanics and computers and even phone calls that are made, are there more questions that need to be asked, and so on. And so there were some things that we did come up with. There are some revisions that have been made internally within our own procedures. We have informed the board of that, and we're going to implement those.
And I said I had one last question. I have one more question, and I promise this is the last one.
All right.
And let me first qualify this question by saying that I support all of you 100%. I'm wondering if you have made provision for the community to share in this selection process.
Yes. Well, in terms of not just what I would say general community in general, meaning not random, someone who may just walk off the street and say, I'm interested in this choice or this selection, but certainly it goes beyond staff, meaning that we're looking at parents who are involved in the program and some players who are at the senior level who are a little more mature to be able to sit and give some sort of valuable input in terms of the type of individual that would best maybe work well with young people. And obviously coaches, administration, and staff are all on the committee.
How about alumni?
Who?
Alumni?
Alumni? Yes, in the first round there was Phil Henderson, which is an alumni of Crete Monee School, as well as the basketball program.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next public comment I have is... Okay.
Before you go further, I want to clarify for the public record. You just said that, John, correct me if I'm wrong, the board, or either maybe this Dr. Hunt asked the question if the board makes the decision. And it's my understanding that we do not make the decision in hiring the coach. The decision is who?
The decision is the administration. In this case, though, we are in consult with the board every step of the way because of what has happened in the past. But normally, the board hires personnel in terms of teachers and aides and secretaries and food service and so on. The coaches, which is under the extra duty contract of the union that is in place as far as it's a collective bargaining agreement, it's a stipend. It's not a full-time position, and those hires are made by the school. You'll never see them on a personnel report, as far as we don't put coaches on a personnel report. But in this case, as I said, because of the notoriety of the situation, we chose to keep the board abreast of this situation because, again, because there's been so much in the paper about this program and the position, we feel that the board needs to be informed so they can feel comfortable about the decisions that will be made. And if they're in disagreement, we want to hear that because because, as I said, we want to make sure that if we're in the papers at all, as much as possible, that we can control it's you're there for positive reasons. Well, they'll tell us because we are informing them and we give them space to be able to respond. And trust me, on this one, we're listening very hard.
The next public comment I have is Jeanette Palanca, and we'll talk about the soccer field, and then you have another one for you can lead right into the 21st Century Youth Project. So,
I want to say this before Jeanette speaks. First of all, I want to thank you, Jeanette, for coming out, and I want to let the public know who's here tonight that normally on our agenda we have something called Around the District, and it's dedicated basically to give some space at every board meeting to talk about something very positive that's going on in the district and to give recognition to either a program, our staff, or some sort of student achievement. Janetta, is it Janetta or Jeanette?
Jeanette.
Jeanette tonight has two comments. One is about the soccer field. That may be more questions, or it may not be positive. I don't know. But we'll let you do that under public comment. But then after that, and hopefully we can address that issue, we would like for you to speak to the board and speak to the audience about the 21st Century Youth Project that is at our high school, because we understand that you have some things that you feel that both the board and the public needs to know about it.
I do.
Okay.
I hate to bring the negative in first.
Yes,
But
go
sitting
ahead.
at dinner, my son, who is a soccer player, informed me that the soccer team will be playing their games at Heritage Park, which I find a little disturbing, given that, one, the soccer program is growing at Crete Monee High School. They are getting better. Their record last year was a winning record. We had the second highest scorer in the state in the history at our school, who will be playing again this year. It's very disappointing to say, come and watch him play at Heritage Park on a field that's not a standard-sized soccer field. So it's disappointing, and I know that the soccer team, who's been working very hard, they work very hard just as much as the football team in what they do year-round, and they work very hard academically, most of them achieving high honor roll status. So to say that their efforts are going to be rewarded by playing out at Heritage Park on what is not a real soccer field that has pits in it is very disappointing. And I look at some of the soccer fields that we've played at, and I think, it's very sad that this school can't afford a soccer field, and we're going to be in the same position. So it's very disappointing that they made the decision based on their opinion that the soccer team isn't good enough, the program isn't popular enough to be at the high school football field. So I wanted to bring that to the attention of the board as well as the public, that it's a sad state to see the school pushing for not just football but all other outside extracurricular things and not be able to give the attention to it as well as any kind of resources. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, and that was a last minute thing because I heard that just about an hour ago.
Well, let me respond by saying this. Jeanette, you don't mind me calling you Jeanette, do you?
Not at all.
Okay. First of all, if that was actually told to you from an adult that works here in this district, that it was done based on the team is not valued, I would like for you to give me a call if you're not going to stay here till the end of the board meeting, or if you are, I'd like the details of who told you that, because that is just totally misinformation.
That no one told me that.
Okay.
I was told, as well as the team was told, that they will be playing at Heritage Park.
That's
I
true.
see absolutely no
Yes.
reason that they wouldn't be given the same consideration on a school resource as the football team. Now, in my opinion, and what I see, is that they're not valued enough.
Okay. Yes, and that's a difference, the interpretation of the decision that was made. Unfortunately, again, I still have an issue with the fact that enough information wasn't given to you as a reason. Let me tell you the reason. The board this summer made a decision to renovate the football field at the tune of about $40,000. With that came a recommendation. We also, hired a turf consultant who basically told us that although in year one you can have some play on the field, you cannot have team after team after team, playing on it. So we made a decision for actually 2 years that we're going to do two things. One is that we are going to work toward building a new soccer field on our property. That's already started. The second thing is that, yes, the soccer team has to, for the next 2 years, play at Heritage Park. I will tell you that it's not true that it's not a standard field, because if it wasn't a standard size field, IHSA would not allow them to play there. So it is standard size. Now, if someone again told you that there's holes in the field or anything like that, we're not aware of that, and if they are, we have to again check that, because IHSA is very peculiar about the safety of kids on fields. In fact, if refs see holes, literal holes in field, they will not allow the game to take place. So I hope, again, that maybe that was rumor that was told to you and that you didn't actually go out there and see a hole.
I spend all summer long out
if
in
you've seen
Heritage.
holes, then that will be something that will be addressed prior to a season being played there. But the real reason was not because of the fact of undervaluing the team. In fact, I agree with everything that you said. We have a great team. It's made a huge amount of improvement, and we do have a young player, and not only just him, I know exactly who you're talking about, who was actually not only, I think, SICA Conference Player of the Year, but I think he was a South Suburban Player of the Year for all of the goals that he scored, and he's coming back as a senior, I understand. So the issue is that even the football team this year, even them, are only going to play 3 games on this field this year, 3. And so it's because of the fact that when you put that kind of money in it and the type of root time that it takes for the rooting of the sod and so on, is just that it can't withstand a lot of foot traffic and foot running with cleats and so on, at least for a year minimally, and we want to extend it to 2 as far as too much traffic. But as I said, in the meantime, we're trying to build a permanent home so that once that home is built, that we'll never have to go this route again.
Well,
Okay.
I appreciate the clarification on the decision.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that our coaches are giving that word, because I hope that no one's giving that impression that this decision was made on bias, prejudice, or slighting someone, because that was not the purpose at all.
We had tired soccer kids at the end of a practice that were told where they'll be playing, and so, they might not have that information, but
Okay,
a reaction of a concerned parent.
I get it. I understand.
Okay, now on to good stuff.
All right.
I'm here to talk to you about the 21st Century Grant, which brought in a program very quickly at the middle of last year. It was difficult to arrange everything, but it's called the 21st Century Youth Project. And what this team does is it takes our kids, any kids that are interested from freshman to senior, brings them to the DeVry Institute. Every week, my son spent 3 hours a day on Tuesdays going through the motions of actually programming an Android application. He walked out of the 5 weeks, I believe it was 8 weeks of classes, having programmed an Android application that can be downloaded off the Android market. I'm extremely passionate about it because, one, they didn't ask anything of these kids. They didn't have to have exceptional grades. They did not have to have exceptional skills in math. They did not have to have exceptional outgoing personality. This is a proactive program for our students who are not active in sports, that want to learn more about what else is out there, and this program hit the nail right on square. It was an awesome program for these kids. The program founder, Professor Emil Cambry, he stayed with the students throughout the entire program. His team stayed with the students throughout the entire program. At the end of it, after they put their Android applications on the market, they went, my son had the opportunity, any student could have the opportunity to go to an actual hackathon. And in my age, a hackathon was a bad thing, but apparently that's where computer programmers, anybody in the computer industry, novices, people who understand it very well, come together and they program for 8 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours. So he had the opportunity to go sit on one, be on a team with senior level programmers from global companies, and learn C++ programming. He learned Java programming from the 21st Century Youth Project. They taught him that. He can go home and program anything he wants to do. He can talk to them anytime he wants to. He's got direct communication with them. He learned how to speak on a business plan for an application. He learned how to understand the marketplace out there. He learned how to connect and talk to people and not be afraid, not having had any programming at all, not be afraid to talk to somebody that was a senior level programming. It was an awesome program. I have a human resource background, and part of my job is to understand the labor market, and this program certainly reached our students where they could possibly go. They might not be programmers, but they're not going to be afraid of going into a manufacturing environment and being able to program the machines. They're not going to be afraid to walk into an office situation and understand an Excel spreadsheet and put in a detailed financial equation. They're looking to bring it back, and I hope with your help and the public's help, we get it back here and it expands. We came on very quickly last year, so it didn't get much notoriety. So I'm hoping that we can really push this program, get more students involved if they want to get involved. It is a fun time. They eat, they program, they learn new things, they learn what's out there. My kids are gaming. Our kids are all gaming, and they're talking to each other online. They do this there, but they do it with a purpose and an intention. And it's something that everybody thinks that they can do. I can program a game. I can do this. Well, guess what? Our students can. And we, along with Naperville High School, are the only schools in this area that can't do that. So I think it's a proactive thing, and I hope that we can spread it a little bit better this year and really bring more people into the program, and parents and students and administration and faculty. So I really, it's been an awesome time, and I think we need to continue it on.
I'm so glad that you did come, because I am aware of the program. I'm aware that it came in mid-year. We didn't get a chance to really do a lot of advertisement because of the fact that it was mid-year, and in fact it was in the heat of a lot of things going on.
Right.
But I'm glad that a certain group of students did come and participate, and that they're excited, their parents are excited, and you have got my mind stirred to go talk to the right people at the administration level at the high school, because I know who to talk to about maybe, if not at the September board meeting, but at the October board meeting, bring those students, if they would like, to come and let us hear their voices.
Absolutely.
And some of the things that they've learned, if there's anything that they can actually demonstrate. And yes, I agree with you. I think as students speak and are excited about things, that we need to do more of that over the intercom or through the internet or whatever ways that they can communicate with each other so that we can grow the program. And I will be in contact to make sure it's something that we can repeat. I'm not sure if the partnership between DeVry and I think it was also a university, and the 2 or 3 high schools that were involved are still connected, but we'll find out if it's still going to continue, because if it is, yes, we will continue to be a part of it and try to grow the program.
I think that's great because it's really what we're looking for. And I think being a parent of 3 kids, one already graduated, I see that they're anxious for something in that area that'll help them in their future, not just in colleges, but in the job world out there. So, but it was awesome, and it's great to see something like that come in, and I hope it continues.
Hey, Jeanette, thank
Yeah.
you so much. I want to just say, since we do have a public, I said it to you, and I'm going to say it to them, that it is awesome, even as we discussed with Mr. Rossi, to have you come out as parents and public to tell us, because I said to John earlier, you get a lot of emails, but you were passionate. She sent me an email, about 2 months ago, and she kept at it. You got to answer me, you got to say something. And I said to her that, yes, you can come to the board and have a public comment, but John and I talked earlier today, and it's so important because I'm a vocal parent, and I feel passionate about if we see something positive, you could tell me the information and say, pass it to the board.
You're
But
right.
the bottom line is your words mean they're the mustard. So I just want to thank you and for doing 2 things tonight. Expressing yourself. It's not always a happy situation, and you may have something that you need to share that isn't going to make the board smile, but that's not the intent. The intent is we need to hear what you all have to say, and whether it's good or bad. So I just thank you for bringing both messages and to say keep coming back. So
No,
thanks.
I'll do that. I didn't think about it. Like I said, I sent you the email. I'm like, take a look, help me. And you're like, well, speak up. And we all should be speaking up about the good.
Yes.
We hear a lot about the negative, but when the good things happen, we need to speak up. But you're right. So
Thank you.
thanks for the opportunity.
Your son, the one that's involved in the 21st Century Youth Project, you
Yeah.
don't mind if we have a few people contact him and talk to him about the program?
Oh, no, not at all.
What's his name, though?
Austin
Austin.
Polanka.
Okay, and is he a what, junior?
He's a junior
Junior this coming year?
this coming year.
Okay,
Yeah.
all
So he
right.
started in the sophomore, and he was looking for something outside of school like that. And yeah, he actually won a phone at the hackathon. Their team came in 2nd place, so he was excited.
I'll tell you what you really ought to be excited about it. He comes up with an app that can be downloaded for money.
Oh, he's working on it.
You may be rich.
He's working on it, but the opportunity is there.
Yeah.
Those 8 classes, those 8 weeks of classes, gave him the opportunity to do that.
Exactly.
And anybody can do that,
Yeah.
except me.
All right.
Thanks very much.
I think real quickly, I'm going to make a real quick comment on that. I think from the board perspective up here, we're always looking for innovative programs that anybody can bring to us to bring to the students and things like that. Myself, on a personal note and stuff, I'm a manager at a manufacturing facility, and right now we're looking for programmers and CNC type of people and stuff. And you know what? You can't find anybody around here anymore and stuff like that. 20 years ago, it was an easy thing and stuff, but it's being very, 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 very driven, a lot of it by location. So, anything that supports, manufacturing and industry and stuff, I'm more than willing to support anything like that. So,
You're absolutely right.
thank you very much for your efforts and keep it up. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, so I'm actually the founder of the program, and
Okay.
so I can answer any questions that you have outside of the meeting. But pretty much in terms of the program, what we're trying to do is give students an opportunity. I'm a professor at North Park University. Emil Cambry. Yes, Professor Cambry. Emil is what I go by when I go home. But yeah, so the whole point of what the program is trying to do is to give students transferable skills, because as he mentioned, in terms of you can't find programmers, these students or these people who could program are getting $150 an hour, and they can't find. They're given too much work nowadays. So what we're trying to do is give students an opportunity. In addition to that, they learn business planning. So we go through the whole process, and we didn't get a chance to do as much for Crete Monee because we only had 5 to 8 weeks to work. But for the Naperville School District, they created a business plan. plan. We actually had free SAT instruction as well so that they can be able to go on to college. So some of the success that we've had from that is our average student increased their SAT scores by 140 points, which we thought was significant. Something for free, we brought in a PhD student to be able to teach on part of that. We got the business planning. We also provided a lot of mentorship. So we connected, and more so with the Naperville School District, just because we didn't have enough time. But what we were able to do is we were able to connect them with some of the founders of like YouTube and Facebook and things like that. So they're able to see people who are kind of look like them, who think like them, to be able to talk like them and be able to discuss what is possible. And not everybody's going to become Mark Zuckerberg and create a Facebook. But hey, maybe they can work for a company that needs somebody at $100,000 a year. What we wanted to do with Crete Monee, and actually my co-founder is actually from this area as well, so he's very, very passionate about having this kind of a program here. But what we're trying to do is really just trying to give students of all places and not looking at GPAs, grades, and saying, hey, here's an opportunity, and we hope that you can be successful as a result. So if you have any questions, I have plenty of brochures for you and business cards, but I would love to work with you and talk with you more, because in addition to that, we're launching an online platform as well so that they can be able to learn when they're not in class with us, so that they can be able to have an online class in addition to that. So we're going to be working with 5 to 7 schools starting in a month, so we're expanding the program, and we would love Crete to be a part of it. Thanks.
How many of our students participated? Do you know offhand?
Well, actually, we had 3 students from here. The problem we had in terms of was the transportation, because to go from the DeVry Institute, which is in Tinley Park, from here to there, we actually had 12 students that showed up in the information session, but many of them couldn't show up because of the transportation situation. So one of the things that we're looking to do is see, hey, logistically, how do we get students from here to there in an efficient way that makes sense for our bottom line, because it's coming out of my own bank account, so it's not necessarily something where we hope that we can find some kind of a partnership to work with.
Dr. Cambry, can you leave your information
Yes.
with Mr. Elrod? And also, I'm going to, I don't have my business card with me, but I'm going to give you my information. I'd like for you to give me a call this week if you can, or email me, either one, or maybe we can sit down and talk. Mr. Elrod give you this on a crude sheet of paper, but it'll have to work for tonight. That's my information right there. Okay? All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, I haven't received any more public comment forms, so we're going to move on with the business portion of the meeting. So I'd like to call the meeting. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Just before you get to speak and stuff, when you finish, can you fill out a public comment form just so that we have your name and record of who's there? It's simply for our record keeping in the minutes of the meeting. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mamie Harris, and I am a concerned taxpayer. And there was some comment made tonight. I just came to the meeting to see exactly what was going on with the meeting and to get an update and clarification about the hiring process that I've been hearing buzzing. My concern is, I don't think you answered the question, and maybe you did, and first I want to apologize for being late. But my question and concern is the process that Crete Monee is implementing in the hiring of the staff members here. I believe that Superintendent Rogers said that it was an administration decision on the hiring, and I also want to know who is sitting on, do you have a committee, and who is on the committee for the hiring?
Are you talking about just hiring in general?
Yes.
I'll let Dr. Edison address that. He's head over human resources.
Dr. who?
Dr. Edison.
Okay.
As far as just general hiring, depending on what the specific positions are, the hiring takes place primarily in the buildings where the position is going to be held, and it is conducted usually by the administrators within that building. They put together a interview team, and we take a look at the applications, we screen the applications, make selections for who is going to be interviewed, and then the interviews are conducted. They make a recommendation to me for who they are selecting. I review the recommendation, and then I submit if I agree with the recommendation, then I submit that to the board for approval. That's generally what the process is.
Now, who is sitting on the team? You said you have a team. Who is on the interview team?
Well, it varies depending on the buildings. So, for instance, let's say if it's an elementary school, the elementary principal will be on the team. In some cases, a teacher or several teachers. Sometimes I will actually sit on a committee or a team. Sometimes other people from the district office will. But it varies depending on the position and depending on the building. But
Okay, I'm referring to the high school. Who is actually on the team?
So at the high school, primarily it's the building principal who conducts the bulk of the interviews. However, in many instances, some of the assistant principals or some of the division leaders may also conduct the interviews and be part of the team. Again, it depends on what the position is. Let's say like a English position. In most cases, there will be the building principal, the director for English will be on that particular team, possibly a teacher, possibly another assistant principal.
Okay, well, I heard tonight that you said, I believe the young lady that sat over there, I don't know her name, but I do recall her saying that something pertaining to a young man that's a student that's sitting on the team. So I want to know how is a student is supposed to be doing what grown-ups are supposed to be doing as for selecting a teacher.
In most cases, we don't have students participate in the interview process. In some cases, in the past, that has taken place. Usually, it has taken place in a format of that they're not actually sitting on the actual interview team itself, but they are part of a group or a committee that are either will watch the interviews or will have an opportunity to meet those particular applicants. That's usually the process that takes place with the students. But as Dr. Rogers alluded to earlier, this particular case with you're referring to the basketball position.
Correct.
This particular case, because of the amount of the issues that are involved with it, we have taken a lot of we've been very, very careful in how this process has run. And we have talked about many different areas and different things that we want to take a look at, which is why the board has been more involved in this than normally, that being the case. And because of that, there are some things that we have looked at that we have discussed, we will continue to discuss, and before the process is completed.
I want to say about students aren't making decisions about hiring in this district. But
I didn't say that. I'm saying why was a student sitting in? If he's not going, or she, whoever the person might be, if they're not going to make a decision on who's going to be hired, why is that person sitting in there during the time of the interview?
I will give you an example. When we hired the high school principal, there were 3 committees, if you want to use the word committee, around students that the principal had to sit and talk with. Only the board and the superintendent made the actual decision, though. There was an administrative group that was pretty much other principals. There was a teacher group that was all teachers, and then there was a student group. Each one of the principals that were finalists for this current high school position did sit down with a group of students, and students were able to ask questions of that prospective principal as to different things that concern them from a student's point of view. All of the feedback was written down and was sent to myself and the Board of Education, and they did sort of rate the candidates. But I've seen that in superintendent interviews where there's a community group that may actually involve students. but students aren't making the decision. They may have some sort of input. So in this case, I don't know of any situation ever where students in this district have sat in on a teacher interview where we're hiring a teacher, like an English teacher, math teacher, social studies, or science teacher. But in the case of a coach that may or may not be a full-time teacher on staff, sometimes students are asked to sit in and listen and to give input. I've also seen on Board of Educations students that actually sit with the board during board meetings. They're actually sitting up here. They're usually seniors or juniors, and they participate, but they do not have voting rights, and that is true of some Board of Educations. So it's not unethical, or it's not necessarily unusual to ask for the voice of a student, especially at the high school level. But we do not have students hiring or making decisions about staff that's hired. Only the adults make that choice.
I hear what you're saying. Let me just give you some background information about myself. I am a retired principal, and I have skills on interviewing, and I have never heard of a student that's not part of the student government to be allowed to sit in while they were interviewing someone. I interviewed, and I was a principal for 35 years. I just retired 2 years ago. So I want to know, maybe the laws has changed in 2 years. I don't know. Maybe they have. But I'm just listening tonight. I didn't come to create anything. I just came to listen because I wanted to get involved in what's going on. But I did hear some concern from, I believe your committee was called the Oversight. Okay, and then the young man that was sitting here, the pastor or some of the church in the community. So I just wanted to know what was the procedures and who was on the committee, because I have heard some concerns and I wanted to know how you were doing it.
Okay.
That was my reason. And, you know, about the student being allowed to sit in, and I don't know, did the laws change where students are allowed to sit in?
Well, there's no law that prevents them from not having input. There's different designs as to how you can gather that input.
Mm-hmm.
But again, what I will tell you is I don't know of any time ever where a student has had voice in teacher hires. But when it has come down to larger positions, such as principals at high schools in particular, superintendents where there is community input, and sometimes community input has involved students. And in cases of coaching in particular, because again, it's not, all coaches aren't teachers.
I know.
Yes.
Yep.
Then sometimes we have allowed, and there is nothing legal or illegal against it, we have allowed students to have voice. And as you said, more traditionally, you're right, it is student government, but sometimes there's other leaders in schools and other organizations that we look at equally as important, that they are usually student leaders that have student voice of leadership throughout the school. They just don't necessarily all the time sit on student government positions.
But and I'm going to sit down after this, something as crucial as hiring the coach for something that has been in the newspaper, do you think that a student should be sitting there, especially the student that supposed this alleged had happened to?
Well, again, that's an allegation as
Okay.
to whether or not the student who was sitting there was involved or not, because that's not public information, and unless the student or whoever the person is that is involved is publicly declaring themselves as that way, we can't speak to that. But in this case, honestly, I do felt it was important for players to get a sense of who would be over them because of the fact of what had happened. And again, just to hear, not that it's a determining factor, but sometimes children or young people have a sense sometimes that's very keen that sometimes even adults miss. And I think that it is important sometimes to say, is there a comfort level here is basically what we were trying to gauge, not so much the analyzation of whether or not there's good coaching practices or what kind of plays do you run, but it was more of a sense of who the person was.
Okay, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to
Sure.
finish. You said that it's for players, meaning more than one. Am I correct?
Yes, it was
Okay.
two in particular. that
Oh, you
sat
did
on.
have, okay,
It
because
was-
I
it
was
was-
under the impression it was only one student, so
No, it
you're
was-
saying it was two.
It was two players.
Okay,
Yeah.
so why not the whole team if we're going to use
It was too
the-
large. It would be too large because
Okay.
the team consisted of maybe almost 15 players, and we didn't want to have all of them show up. So
Okay.
we picked two representatives that are designated as the leaders on the team.
Okay, you could have did it into, split it up, let a group over here interact with him and another group, and then everybody would have gotten a chance. You would have had more information. Thank you.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you. Please remember to fill out a public form, just for our records, your name and some contact information. Their forms are on the back table there. Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Wanda Harris. I'm a parent here at Crete Monee High School. Basically, what I wanted to ask about all the new hiring of all the new teachers that's coming into the district, and about the guidance council. I guess y'all got rid of all of them. I wanted to ask about that, and I don't know any information, but just what I've heard.
What exactly is the question?
Well, the question is, I wanted to know about the new teachers you hired in the district. I understand you hired about 22 or 20, and the new guidance counselors you got. You don't have the same guidance counselors that they had last year. You have new ones.
Yes, but again, Dr. Edison, speak to that.
As far as the guidance counselors, yes, there were new guidance counselors that were hired for this coming school year. It was an administrative decision to hire those new counselors for the start of this year, to reconfigure the counseling office and to move to try to make it more efficient.
Okay.
Now, but the question about the hires themselves, I'm not quite sure.
Oh, the teachers.
The
All the
teachers.
teachers, yeah. Was
Okay.
some minority teachers hired or just all Caucasian? That's my question.
Yes, we hired, we hired about 42 staff members totally, and of those 42, I believe 9 were minority hires.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess that's about all I need to know right now, but I want to make sure everything is in place for our kids this winter when they come back to school. Because of the guidance council, do they have all their records in place and all of that? Because in the future, I've had problems with that.
And that may be why we made the change as far as
Okay.
having a new staff. But no, the guidance counselors have been in for the past couple of weeks, even before the other staff members have been in,
Okay.
working on those types of things with the records and so forth.
Okay.
And, but yeah, if any questions you have with that, feel free to give me a call or contact me. I'll be happy to share.
I sure
some
will.
detailed things.
Okay, I sure will.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, please fill out a public comment form with your name and some information on it for our records. Thank you very much. We're going to be moving on with the business portion of the meeting now. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and Madam Secretary, please call our roll.
Mr. Brown?
Here?
Mrs. Sanders?
Here?
Mrs. Stockton? Secretary here? Mr. President?
Here. You stand for the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have been told that we do have the need for a hopefully short closed session to discuss personnel, so I need a motion to go to closed.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Stockton, I forgot, I'm sorry. And then seconded by Mr. Brown. All those, I need a roll call on that.
Mrs. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. Stockton? Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Secretary, yes. Mr. President?
Aye. We're now in closed. Hopefully we'll be back shortly. There's not enough?
We'll get you one.
We'll get you some.
Sure. No, I don't see him.
time he shows up, what?
We're here till midnight.
It's 9:29.
I know, but he's just being funny.
We have no intention on being here till 9:29. Yes. Did we not pay our electricity or our heating, gas? In and out of here. I'm glad I don't live in Monee.
Okay, we'd like to get moving along here again. Need to come out of closed, so I need to get a motion to come out of closed.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Brown, seconded by Mrs. Stockton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstentions, none. We're out of closed. Back into the open. So, I need to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed on our board packet.
Second?
Moved by Mrs. Hall, seconded by Mrs. Sanders. Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Nikita said it. Secretary, please call the roll.
I did have one question.
Okay.
The 2 full-time subs at the middle school, what would they be doing? Are they floating, or do they have specific assignments, and who do they report to?
Those 2 subs we had discussed, believe in a personnel committee meeting last year, and they served a similar purpose as actually the same purpose as our part-time or our permanent subs at the high school. So they report on assignments to the building each day, and then each day they are given a specific assignment. So they can do a long-term sub, they could do a day-to-day sub, or whatever. But we felt the need that building needed at least 2 permanent subs, and so those were the ones that filled it. But yeah, they report basically to different places each day.
And who's the supervisor?
The building principal
Okay.
is oversees them. Yes.
And with those the permanent subs, I don't know if I heard you say it before or read, this is, we minimize some of the hours or the hours that they can work. Is that still in effect?
Yes, that applies to permanent subs as well. It is for substitutes who have the teaching certification, they're limited to 120 days. And for those who do not have their teaching certificates, they're limited to 90 days. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to get the best mileage out of our permanent subs was to make sure that they had the teaching certificates.
I just want to make clear that we did go to the personnel committee. We showed data because the elementary schools had even asked for permanent subs, but we showed that the data didn't justify permanent subs at the elementary level, only at the high school and the middle school, because we showed all of the absences of teachers for either professional reasons, assessments, IEP meetings, and so on. I think there was a list of different categories of absences, and there were so many people that were out for legitimate reasons, and there just wasn't enough coverage. So the personnel committee at that time did allow us to have 2 permanent subs for the second half of last year, and the need is still there. So technically, again, like one of the comments today, maybe the word new position shouldn't be used, because it is a position that actually was approved last semester. So they've been in for 1 semester, and we're just rolling them over for this year. So they were in the budget.
Other comments? If not, then Secretary, please call a roll.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mrs. Sanders?
Aye.
Mrs. Stockton? Secretary, aye. Mr. President?
Aye. We got some donations that were part of the consent agenda, and we'd like to thank Mrs. Darlene Sheehan for a donation to Crete Monee High School with some golf equipment. Thank you very much for your donation. Next on the agenda is action reports. Business portion of this is we're looking for a resolution to approve a tentative budget for 2011-2012 school year. So I'd like a motion to approve that resolution. Moved by Mrs. Stockton,
Second.
second by Mr. Brown. Bob, do you have any presentations or comments on that?
Yeah, usually with the tentative budget, it could be very brief, but I'd like to go through a few main points. I handed out this handout here, should be next to your papers, where it just says main points. Basically, for fiscal year 2011, Crete Monee, we were able to stay within all of our budgeted limits, within all of our funds. Staffing was very closely monitored all year, and our salary and benefits budget came in right as planned. And the state of Illinois actually surprised the district and had sent us our second quarter payment 6 months late, and then our third quarter payment, which was also about 6 months late, but it was never planned to even receive the second or third quarter payments. And we thought we would just get 1 quarter out of the whole year. So that was an extra $3.5 million that the district received above and beyond what was budgeted. So that was a very good thing for the district to help our year-end fund balances. During 2010, back in January of 2011, our health insurance rates increased due to basically the economy and the amount of layoffs that we had in the previous year. That tends to make claims go up and insurance costs going up in general. So if you remember, our health rates increased 23% back in January, and that was a large increase in cost for the district. And for next year, we're budgeting that'll actually end up costing an extra $600,000 for fiscal year 12 compared to fiscal year 11, with those increases happening. And we also the rates are probably still going to go up another 10% next year. For 2011, one of our cost reductions was to discontinue the pre-K busing for the regular education students. So that was actually a large savings for the year, and that will increase our reimbursement rates for transportation. Pretty much, in terms of revenue, everything for 2012 in terms of revenue remains flat or actually decreases, except for property taxes. We will get more revenue in property taxes just because of how the formulas for the state, how it works, how it's based off of inflation. So you get whatever inflation was. It was 2.7% for this year. And also we had our University Park TIF that expired, so we got all that new property. So we will have increased tax revenues of about $1.5 million for FY12. But in terms of state funding, that's actually going down next year. Federal funding, that's also decreasing just due to the fact that all the stimulus funds are now over with. They all expire in September. So that's $1.6 million of funds that we've been receiving the last 2 years that now go away. So with revenue kind of staying flat, actually decreasing a little bit, some of the increases that we have is, of course, our union contracts. We have our contractual raises that we have to give our teachers and our teacher aides. Those cost about $1.1 million a year to give out those raises. As I said before, health expense costs are going to go up about $600,000. And then our non-union salaries, the board had agreed to an average 2.5% raise for non-union since non-union employees were frozen in FY11. And that cost about $350,000 to give that raise. So those are your main increases in expenditures versus, like I had said, how revenue just maybe slightly increases in some areas and goes down in other areas. But those being the main points, basically, for 2011, we had a balanced budget for the first time in a long time. For 2012, you'll see that the tentative budget shows a deficit once again, but that's just because of how you have your annual increases that come along, and unless there's equal increases in revenue, that's what's going to happen. If you could click on Board Book real fast on under section, number 8, it's the second item where it says tentative budget FY12. I'll run through this real briefly. It's a color PDF file on Board Book. It's the second item. Oh, I just clicked off agenda packet. Is it 27? Yeah. The first page shows our tentative budget versus our June PMA 5-year forecast. So that's important to understand, what are the differences between what we are forecasting and what our tentative budget shows. At the top is our FY12 tentative budget. In the middle shows you what our 5-year forecast was that we discussed in June. And then the third section just highlights where the major variances are. So first off, you can see in dark green for the education fund and transportation fund an extra $2 million plus in each of those funds for a beginning fund balance. That's the extra money that came from the state, those extra second and third quarter payments that we received. So that's additional fund balance compared to where we thought we would be with our 5-year forecast. Now you can see for Ed Fund, projected revenue is about $600,000 lower than we forecasted. And the reason for that is you saw in the FYI that the state announced that the general state aid will be prorated at 95% this year. So that basically means you get, it's like a 5% cut to what the state's going to give us for our general state aid. And so that equates to, we get about $10 million, so that's about a $500,000 loss. That, that's not anticipated. That's actually one of the first times general state aid has been prorated in that type of way. For the expenditures, you can see that the expenditures are about $900,000 higher than what we had forecasted back in June. The reasons for those are the health insurance rates going up, like I discussed. They're going up higher than we had thought that they would. Also, built into the tentative budget right now, I have about $200,000 of contingency for new positions that might be necessary depending on enrollment, which we won't really know that until our final enrollment numbers come in and the school year starts, so we're just sure to build that in. Then also about a 1% variance in our salaries, which basically is attributed to there's more security being forecasted for next year. We would use our own security guards again, possibly, instead of using the Crete police like we have in the past. Also, the changes we've made with our nurses and medical record technicians compared to health aides. And then also some pay increases for when people attain a higher degree for the teachers, they move, it's called horizontal movement, they'll get a raise for the higher degree. And this year they also get additional money in their contract for professional development. So those are items that just weren't accounted for in the forecast that are coming through now as a variance here in the Ed Fund. Other than that, transportation expenditures should actually be lower than we forecasted based on seeing our final numbers and that our invoices and bills were lower than we thought they would be. And also with our new contracts next year, we locked in lower rates. And the only thing is when you spend less money, then the reimbursement of that money will be a little bit lower than you expected. So that's the variance you see for the revenue for your transportation fund. So those are the primary variances between where we were with our June forecast and where we are now with our tentative budget. The very next page just shows you the same layout, but this is comparing the 2012 tentative budget to 2011. So to show year over year what the changes were, basically you see that education fund revenue actually goes down $1.5 million, and that's the net difference between the stimulus money going away of $1.6 million, our general state aid being decreased by $600,000, and then actually property taxes in the Ed Fund going up $700,000. So that all nets out to that difference. As far as expenditures going up $2.2 million year over year, that difference is the $1.1 million in union raises, $350,000 in non-union raises, and then $600,000 increase in health insurance costs. And then also a $200,000 item for early retirement options and retirement incentives. You can see for O&M, revenue goes up $800,000. That comes from our tax levy. how we were able to choose how to allocate those levies to the different funds, and we had allocated more money to education fund, to the operations and maintenance fund by decreasing the education fund revenue and just sending more of it to O&M. In terms of the expenditures in O&M, that is where we used to allocate about $200,000 a year for our district-wide projects and renovation projects, and now we're saying that we're going to do $400,000 a year for upkeep and major projects across the district. So there's that increase there. In terms of transportation, year over year, the revenue is down $1 million due to basically the timing of state payments, and that for 2012 it's going to be one delayed FY11 payment, which was at very low levels, and then probably 3 FY12 payments, which will probably get late, but we should get them all by the end of the year. And those will be based on the lower transportation expenses that we'll have this year due to our new contracts that have better rates. And then finally, IMREF and Medicare, you can see that expenses are up about $360,000, and that's just a function of higher salaries and the fact that IMREF rates increase about 10% a year, so it went from about 10% to 11% for the employer contribution on IMREF. So basically that's just a quick snapshot for our tentative budget compared to our forecast and compared to this year that's just finishing up. The next steps now, basically this budget, if approved to go on to public display tonight, will be displayed publicly starting tomorrow for 30 days. And then we'll have our public hearing in September before the September 19th board meeting. And then I'll give a full presentation on the final legal budget, comparing our final numbers to the final 2011 numbers, break down with graphs and charts, just trying to summarize and explain how we're spending our money and where our expenses are and any variances that we have. And then at that point, the public has a chance to make comments and ask questions. And then at the September board meeting, the board votes on whether or not to adopt the budget for 2012. And then we need to file the budget with the state before the end of September, an approved budget before the end of September. So that's pretty much the process. This is just the first step in the process. And tomorrow in the Daily Southtown Star, there'll be a public notice saying that the budget is on display, and residents could come in and basically look over these documents and ask me any questions they have, and then of course come to the public hearing and ask the questions there as well. Yeah, we could post this on our business page. I think typically they just say that you're supposed to have it on display at central office. So that's kind of, I guess, the minimum requirement. But I have no problem posting it on the website as well. Actually, this will be posted on Board Book anyway, so yeah, we'll have it on the website in all the different areas people would look. So pretty much, it's the recommendation that the board approves the resolution to approve the tentative budget, and that they also approve the notice of the public hearing and the setting of the public hearing date, which would be September 19th, before the board meeting.
So right now, we've currently got a resolution just for approving the tentative budget. We'll do another vote after that on setting the public hearing date, or should we incorporate them both in the same motion? Because then we just have to modify the motion that's out there.
Actually, the resolution to approve the tentative budget is both items into one. The first half of the resolution approves the tentative budget, and then Section 4 in the resolution sets the public hearing date for 7 p.m. on September 19th.
Okay, so we'll probably need to modify the motion out there for the resolution approving the tentative budget for 2011-2012 school year, and also setting a public hearing date of September 19th at the standard board meeting. I need to add a motion approving that resolution. Moved by Mrs. Stockton,
Can we go back? Did we already move?
This is because the first motion didn't have the date for the approval, so that's why we're having a modified motion for this.
So you modified.
Right. Need a second yet.
I second.
Mr. Brown seconds. Do we have any other comments or questions? If not, the secretary, please call the roll.
Mrs. Sanders?
Aye.
Mrs. Stockton? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Secretary, aye. Mr. Rose?
Aye. Next on the agenda are some administrative updates. We've got a FOIA update, which I believe Mr. Elrod will take care of.
Alrighty. I have two requests for the previous month, and one of those, as you can see, came from Mrs. Nash. She requested some personnel-related, HR-related documents, actually, on July the 15th via electronic communication. The status is, if you look at the bulleted items, subsequent to receiving the request, and after a thorough review, I requested an extension of 5 workdays through my office, which extended the expiration date to July 20th, thereabout. She was actually given the items on the 29th via email, and they're listed as following. 2005, the present job description and duties for all central office staff. 2005, the present central office staff positions that have been ripped, including job descriptions. 2005, the present job description and list of all central office staff that were ripped or rehired. List of positions that were created after the rip. Credentials and job descriptions for all central office staff positions after the rip. 2005, the present salaries for all central office staff. Percent of salary increases for all central office staff from 2005 to present. And stipends paid to central office staff from 2005 to present. 2008 to present, minutes from Board of Education meetings. That satisfied that request. The second request was submitted by Mr. Dave Stockton, and he made a request on July 26th by electronic communication. Mr. Stockton requested a copy of the recapture agreement between the school district and the Village of University Park on the Will Center Road project. The status, subsequent to receiving his request, I was notified that both University Park attorney as well as our district attorney, neither of them were available for several days when this request was let. Therefore, I requested of Mr. Stockton and received a 7-workday extension through my office, and it expired on August the 4th. As of this date, the request is still open. I'm still awaiting the final product so that I can provide him a copy signed by the village's attorney and trustee so that he has an official document. Any questions?
You're waiting on whom? Who are you waiting on? Or?
We're waiting on the last follow-up I got is that the University Parks Village were conducting a second read as of August the 9th, and then they were going to officially sign off on the document and make sure that the two attorneys, their attorney as well as ours, have a final review, and then it will be sent to us, signed, sealed, whatever.
Any other questions? Thank you, George. The next item we have for informational is the Open Meetings Act. I guess there is a new House bill that was recently passed, and Mr. Elrod will give us a little bit of information that we need to be attending some training.
The summary is pretty brief, and the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, has decided and created a bill that has passed both houses And it basically states that the bill requires elected officials, including school board members, to successfully complete the training program provided by the Attorney General's Public Access Counselor regarding the Open Meetings Act, or the Open Meetings Act training conducted by the Illinois Association of School Boards. The vote initially for the House was 67 to 48. The Senate voted 43 to 0. The last action is passed both houses. Generally, when a bill passes both houses and the governor does not step in and make changes or table the vote, whatever it is they do, the vote, once it passes both houses, actually is a matter of law. So the board has two choices. They can choose between the State Board School Boards Association, or they can take it through the state's attorney, the Attorney General's office, and I think there was no timeline, so obviously if it was done in the spring of this year, it's effective this year. It's like you going back to school.
The only thing I would have is, do we have to get involved as far as scheduling this training? And from what you're saying, that there's no timeline, but is there a timeline to finish it before the end of the year?
Well, basically, when they do it, they expect that you do it before the end of this fiscal year, this calendar year. As far as the training, you'd contact either of those offices and set up your own individual training. When I trained to become certified as a FOIA agent or officer for the district, I did it online.
Okay.
And they probably will offer the same type of training online to you all as well.
I just said to John, I'm around the corner from the Attorney General's office. It is online, and it is they have a session.
So you can do it online?
Yes.
I'm hoping so, because I don't really want to drive any place to have to do that.
Yeah, I'm almost sure it's going to be online, and it might take anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. And the nice thing about it, if you answer all the questions correctly, or a certain threshold of questions, you're actually issued a certificate as your evidence of having taken the training and passed it successfully.
Website is in our newest edition.
And once you pass, you print your certificate right there.
I'll touch base. I'll touch base with the administration and see maybe something that we talk about at the workshop to coordinate. When you take it and where you do it and how long you have to complete it and all that good stuff, so nobody really gets thrown in jail by the state's attorneys.
And one final point Terry reminded me is that once you've completed, a copy of your certificate has to be returned to the central office.
No need for coordination on my part.
That's fine.
Can I have one?
Yeah, if you get certs and all of that stuff, make sure that Terry or the administration gets copies of it. That's all. Okay, that's cool. Next up is curriculum, which we have some information, I believe, from Mrs. Hirsch over there. Miss Hirsch over there. Public school choice and probably the Illinois College Advising Board.
Okay, well, last summer, if you remember, is it working? I'll get closer. Okay. Last summer, we did an update for the board on public school choice as it related to Crete and Balmoral elementary schools. This year's update includes Talala with the other two buildings. Title I schools, which Crete, Balmoral, and Talala are required under No Child Left Behind when they do not make adequate yearly progress on the annual ISAT exam. We're required to take certain actions. This year, we have all three of our schools are designated for public school choice. And the way it works, it's a very controlled process that goes through the state. And what the state says is it looks at all of your buildings inside the district to determine if you have a viable
school that can be used as a choice site. The only school that we have based on our spring scores as a viable site is Coretta Scott King. The exception for Coretta Scott King is that we already have an admissions policy for that building. So we are not under an obligation as a district to use Coretta Scott King as a choice site. And as I explained our admissions policy to the State Board of Ed, what happens, because now most of our students enter Coretta Scott King through a wait list. So they recommended to us that we not use them as a site because we don't have that many slots available for students, and also because it does have an admissions policy. So the state said that Crete Monee does not have an internal school that can be used as a choice site for students from Crete, Balmoral, and Talala. So once that happens to a district, what you're required to do under No Child Left Behind is contact neighboring school districts to see if they'd be willing to take your students, and in return, you have to be willing to take their students. So we sent letters to 5 neighboring school districts, and as we expected, none of them agreed to take our students. To date, nobody has created this reciprocal agreement. So as a district now, we do not have a choice option site for our students who are now currently attending Crete, Balmoral, and Talala. We have communicated that to parents of students in those buildings. We did it through a mail. We mailed the letter home. We also had the letters available at registration, and it's posted on the school websites and the district website. I have attached the letters in the board packet so you can see what they look like. And those letters have to be approved by the State Board of Education, and they give us the language. It's basically a template. We fill it out and we send it down for approval. So as far as choice, while we have to offer it, we don't have a place for students to transfer to, so we're not actually implementing it because we can't do that. The next piece of choice information that we must do this year, because this is our second year of choice, is that we have to actually post on our website from this point forward annually how many students are eligible for choice and how many actually opt to transfer. So the chart that you'll see in the board report is based on last year's choice information, and if you recall, we had 2 schools, Crete and Balmoral, that were eligible for choice, and their combined enrollment last year was a little over 900 students. The choice option site that was identified last year was Talala, and at that point we couldn't fit 900 students in Talala, so we opted to apply for a waiver from the state, and the state allowed us to prioritize our low-income students by achievement and then fill the slots as they became available. So we did that process. We did it until May 1st, and at that point, of the number of letters that we sent home, parents we contacted, we had 2 students last year that opted to move from their home school to Talala Elementary as part of choice. So that's the choice update. The thing that's new this year is supplemental educational services, and because Crete and Balmoral now are in year 3 of school improvement status, in addition to choice, we now have to implement supplemental educational services, or SES as we like to call it, make it a little quicker. This is a much more involved process than choice, and what it requires is we offer after-school tutoring to low-income students from Crete and Balmoral. The first step in the process is that outside vendors have to apply to the state to be certified as approved providers for tutoring services. So the state gathers all that information, and they then I think it was mid-July, they issued the approved list of providers. And what you do then as a district, in which we did, is we took the list, and the list comes in 3 forms. There's statewide approved, there's county approved, and then there are those providers who are willing to service your district in particular. All told, there were probably 75 different vendors out there. So our job was to contact each one of those give them a time frame, let them respond to find out if they were interested in actually working with our students. To date, we've got 24 that have said that they're interested. So the next step for us is to do the same paperwork like we had to do for choice. So I've got parent notification letters. I have to have forms for parents to select providers, and I have to have a provider summary information sheet. That all has to be approved by the State Board of Ed, and once that's approved, then we can hold a provider fair where the vendors come in, parents can go and meet with the providers and find out more about their programs. The way that we pay for this is out of our Title I funds. We're required by law to set aside 20% of our Title I money to pay for after-school tutoring. So that it's roughly $120,000 that we now put into a pot of money, and the state will take our pool of money and give us a per pupil allocation that we spend, and we will spend that on our low income students until that money, that per pupil allocation runs out. And then after that, parents obviously would have the choice to continue services if they choose to pay for it. But once we give parents the opportunity to choose a vendor, we actually have to enter into contracts with vendors, and the district will then pay the vendors using this pool of Title I money. And our plan here is to have 2 sessions that will run throughout the year as long as the money holds up. Probably something that'll start, I would say, sometime toward the end of the first quarter, and it'll run through the winter time, and then we'll start up late winter and have another session during spring. This is all, it's new in the regard that the last time we had to do this was back when Hickory was in existence. At that point in time, we used internal staff to run the supplemental educational services. The requirements have changed now, and it has to actually be outside people that do it. So that's kind of where we stand with this right now, and I'll of course give you an update as soon as we get more, further into this, and keep you posted on how many vendors, how many kids, and just what this is all going to look like.
I have a question, or a couple of questions. So on our end with this program, do we have to put someone in charge as a liaison or go-to person? And also when you said we'll provide until the money runs out, do you mean only so many students will be allowed to participate, or are you talking about the money period as far as the time that we do these activities or the supplemental?
Well, my understanding on the money is that the state will tell us how much per pupil we have to spend, and it will be figured around this pot of money that we have to set aside. So if it comes up to, and I'm just giving you an example, let's say that the per pupil allocation is $1,000, then the vendors all have a certain fee that they charge. So if a student is allocated $1,000 and they pick vendor A, and vendor A can run, an 8-week tutoring session for $1,000, and that student could stay in that tutoring session for the entire 8 weeks. Once the $1,000 is spent, if they want to continue, then it would be the parents' choice as to whether or not to pick up the remaining costs.
So do we identify the students, or are we sending letters home and letting the parents sign something saying I want my child in there? So it's an optional.
Yes, it is,
thing.
and all that communication now has to be approved by the state. So it's only low income students that are eligible, and then the letter just basically says, we can offer this after school tutoring to your child at no cost to you. Here's a list of our vendors, and they'll be brief descriptions of, some are online, some are with small groups. I mean, they all do it in a variety of ways. Give us your first, second, and third choice. Then we collect all that information, sort it out, create the lists, and then we then have to enter into agreements with the vendors and say we have, Crete's got 10 students that would like your services, and then enter into that agreement with the vendor to provide those services. And as far as a coordinator, I've talked to much everybody that I've talked to, unless the district is really large, it usually just runs through the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. So that would be something that, my staff. Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you, Laura. Next informational curriculum is Illinois College Advising Corps.
This is actually a really, I'm really excited about this. We were approached in late May about becoming a partner district with the Illinois College Advising Corps, and basically what that organization does, it's a partnership with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, all three campuses of U of I, and the National College Advising Corps. And what they do is they provide at no cost to districts a trained college advisor for your high school, and that person, works out of your guidance department. But their sole responsibility is to help underserved and first-generation college-bound students get through that whole application process. So we've been very fortunate. We're now one of 22 high schools in the state of Illinois that's part of this program, and we met our advisor last week. She is a graduate of U of I and has been through a training program that they cover all aspects of what it takes to do this job, in addition to ongoing professional development. But what she's going to do throughout the year is conduct certain benchmark activities, and there's a list of them that's included in the board packet. And what we agree to do is to provide her space in our guidance department, support her, and also to provide data back to the program on the program itself, so how many students attended, that sort of thing. And it was really a program that was founded because they realized that so many high schools now have numbers, the ratio of guidance counselor to student is so high in a lot of places that you can't possibly do everything that you need to do for kids who are on their way to college. So it's really a wonderful opportunity for us, and obviously a great opportunity for our advisor too. I think she's going to be good. She's seems very knowledgeable, very articulate, friendly, and I think her students are going to like her. And she had a chance to meet the guidance department last week, so she will be under Jen Hannigan's department, and then Mike Dugan will be responsible for collecting the data that we need to report back to the group. So great opportunity for us, and something that comes at no cost to us.
Comments? I think it's a wonderful program. I'm glad that we're finally seeing something like that happen in the guidance area. It's something that we've talked about for years of trying to get help or whatever, and this is like a perfect opportunity. So I'm glad to see it happening.
And what I like is the ACT prep aspect of it, because I think that our students really need that. So yeah, sounds like a great program, much needed.
I'm looking forward to. They have the one, if you notice, the one activity is like the Decision Day celebration. So after kids apply, I guess they must have some, celebration when they finally make their choice about where they're going to go to college.
Cool. Anything else? If not, we're going into old business. Do we have any old business to discuss?
Dr. Rogers, I'm not sure if this is considered old business, and I'm not sure if it's the appropriate time to talk about it, but I'm just going to bring it up. Carl Nealon, the Monee Fire Chief, he sent me an email. I think he actually sent it to you and CC'd me regarding an whole issue dealing with the security or lack of cameras, how accurate they are, zooming in on the parking, so on and so forth. Is there a time we can further talk about that, or is this the appropriate time to say something like that?
Let me ask one question, Mr. Elrod. I did get that email. Did I CC that to you
Yes,
too?
you did.
Okay. So I'm going to let Mr. Elrod address that since he's head over student affairs and security.
Daniel Baum actually met today informally. We were talking about the very email. One of the things that we are going to do is schedule. We had already scheduled some time as the end of June approached to get with the assistant principal here at the school and kind of walk around inside as well as outside to see where we might be able to do ourselves better service by adding additional cameras. The type of cameras that we are looking at getting are digitized cameras with the zoom capability. We want to go around and do like a little tour on the exterior to see what we might have, some blind spots that are not covered, and put the cameras that have the zoom capacity or capability in strategic locations. And the inside, we just need to add a few more cameras in strategic locations, but of the analog variety inside, because we don't need those to have zoom capacity. Mr. Neal's concern was that the student parking lot, for instance, which he specifically spoke about, there was an incident that took place where you could actually see it, but it was so there was no zoom capability that it was really blurred. So we're looking at a way to, number one, add additional, maybe more high-end digitized equipment, and possibly adding another server to give us the capacity we need. So that's something we're going to be looking at, getting a price quote through our current vendor, which is ADT. The expense is going to come with the labor, not necessarily the equipment. So we have to look at that and see how much we're talking about as far as what it would cost to actually to perform the work.
Okay, so we're not looking at appropriating those funds to do that in this budget.
Well, this actually this came up recently, and I'm sure that Bob had already put forth all the work in the budget prior to this coming up. What would happen if we, between myself and Daniel, we would, and I'm not going to commit his budget, but we've done things like this before, where we look at things that the buildings need, such as radios or cameras and so on and so forth, and we would have to operate out of our existing budgets, because there's not a line item or anything of that nature that was, to be more specific, that was accorded for that. It wasn't a planned expenditure.
Excellent.
Okay. Any other old business? New business. Looks like we're looking for dates for the committee meetings.
Yeah, just one. We did get the update, quarterly update from ISB concerning new policies that we need to look at as a policy committee. So today is August 15th. I know Kim and Mary are the co-chairs. Kim isn't here right now, but I would be interested in hearing Mary's availability, and then I think we're just going to have to get with Kim either by phone or by email. I would prefer that we wait until school starts, maybe early September, but that's just my preference. Yes. There's 2 board meetings on top of that that month, which is the 19th and the 28th. Okay, well, maybe that changes my mind. Mary, if you don't mind looking at your calendar, I know we usually meet on Wednesdays or Thursdays, and does either next week or the week after, which would either be the 24th or the 25th, or August 31st or September 1st. Do any of those? Any of them? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll talk to Kim tomorrow, and we'll get back with you. Hopefully she'll be available on one of those 4 dates, and we'll just set a date. We'll let the rest of the board know. for anyone who wants to attend, but if no one else, it'll be, the two co-chairs and myself and Terry. If, like I said, if nobody else shows up, we can handle it.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
That's that.
That's that.
Just on a note that everybody should be getting something probably in the mail for the Three Rivers Fall Dinner meeting. So if you want to go to that, please contact Terry and let her know that you'd like to attend. August 18th is what I'm going to call opening day at the high school for staff. So all of the members are invited to attend the welcome and greeting and all of that good stuff for a free breakfast. And please let Terry know for sure if you're going to attend so that she can secure a seat up on stage for you. So, again, Terry already mentioned September 12th being the workshop. So that's pretty much all I have for new business. Does anybody have any other additional new business? If not, then we don't need another closed session, I don't believe. And I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mrs. Stockton.
Second?
Second by Mr. Brown. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Abstentions? None. We are adjourned.